Installing the frame and the front fork. Remove the various parts from the front fork. Place the bead rack facing upwards. Insert the front fork into the frame. Install the second bead rack with the bead rack facing downwards. Tighten the large screws. Install the parts in order. This is the effect after the frame and front fork are installed. Then, install the rear frame and rear derailleur. Align the screws of the rear derailleur with the holes in the rear frame. Tighten the screws. And ensure that the positions of the rear derailleur and rear frame are aligned. Flip the frame over and place it upside down on the ground. Align the slots on the rear frame with the screws on the frame. Align the slots on the rear frame. Then pass it through the frame and hang the chain onto the cassette sprockets. Use tools to connect and lock the chain. Put the chain on the chainring, rotate the crankset, and install the chain in place. The chain installation is complete. Adjust the chain. Now that the chain is in a relatively loose state, move the rear frame back to the appropriate position. Tighten the 4 fixing screws on the frame. The chain debugging is completed. Installing the rear wheel, paying attention to the difference in the hole between the 2 rear wheels. The circular hole is for the left rear wheel. The D-shaped hole is for the right rear wheel. We have already removed the nut and washer on this side in advance, and directly installed the wheel into the center axle. Tighten the anti-slip screws. This side is for the wheel with the D-shaped hole. First, remove the nut and washer and install them into the wheel. Align the D-shaped hole. Then install and tighten the gasket and anti-slip screw, and install the center shaft cover. Installing the chain guard. After installing the chain guard, check if there is any friction between the chain and the chain guard. If there is friction, it can be adjusted left and right. Now let's adjust the rear derailleur. First, lift the two rear wheels and rotate the rear frame to make the disc brake discs also rotate. Check if the disc brake discs are in the middle of the rear derailleur and if there is friction with it. If there is friction, it indicates that the disc brake discs are not in the center position. You can loosen this screw, adjust left and right, adjust to the center position, and then lock this screw. Then thread the rear brake cable through this hole. Pass it through the locking screw, and tighten the screw again. Do not tighten the screw too tightly at this time, which is convenient for installation later. Installing the front fender with stay and front wheel. The one with black support rods is the front fender. Tighten the screws, but do not tighten them too tightly at this time for easy adjustment later. Loosen the screws and safety hooks on both sides of the front wheel. Installing the wheel into the front fork. And make sure that the disc brake pads are stuck in the middle of the disc brake. Then, hang the safety hooks on both sides, install the support rods on the mudguard, and tighten the nuts on both sides. Be sure to adjust the wheel to the center position before locking the screws. The above steps are all carried out when the frame is flipped over. At this time, we need to turn the tricycle over and put it back in its normal position. Adjust the angle of the front fender to the appropriate position, then tighten the screw. Use an inner hexagon to loosen the screw a bit, so that the lower diagonal screw is in a straight line with the handlebar. Insert it into the front fork. Making sure that the safety line is lower than the top of the front fork and not exposed. After adjusting the angle, tighten the screw, but do not tighten it too tightly. Clamp the front wheel with both legs. Hold both ends of the handlebar with both hands. Adjust the direction of the handlebar to make the handlebar and the frame at a right angle. After adjusting the position, lock the screw again. This is the front brake line, which is not currently used. This is the rear brake line. The front brake will currently swing left and right. Adjust the front brake pad to the middle of the brake. And then tighten the upper and lower two fixing screws. The front disc brake adjustment is completed. Now let's adjust the rear derailleur. Loosen this screw. Adjust the rear disc brake disc left and right, so that it is in the middle of the rear derailleur and then lock it. After tightening the rear brake cable, tighten this screw. Rear derailleur debugging completed. Installing the transmission line, fold the tricycle to the side. Thread the transmission line through the upper pipe. Clip the transmission line into the screw and tighten it. Tighten the screw. And lock it with a wrench. Installing the rear reflectors onto the fenders. Pay attention to this rear fender stays. This is facing upwards. This is facing downwards. This is the assembled rear fenders. Remove these two screws. Installing the rear fender. Please note that the rear reflectors should face towards the rear of the tricycle. The other side also follows the same installation method. Adjust the position of the fenders to make them more centered. Installing the seat post and saddle, insert the seat post into the frame. Tighten the seat post clamp. Be sure to tighten it, otherwise the seat tube may fall into the frame. Installing the saddle. Tighten the screws on both sides. The saddle can be adjusted up and down. Adjust to the appropriate position, and tighten the seat post clamp. Installing the pedals. L is the left pedal, R is the right pedal. Installing the spoke reflector. Installing the bell. Installing the rear basket. Installing the front reflector.